Awards for the Commercial Solutions business, and we're based in Fort Collins. And today we're going to have a panel that talks some about the innovations that went into the Z1. We're also going to just give you sort of a behind the scenes or behind the curtain look at how we do what we do in the Commercial Solutions group. So with me I have Josh Peterson. He is the Director of Product Marketing, and Ron Rogers, who is the Senior Director of R&D, and Chris Damer, who is a Senior Platform Manager for Desktop Workstations. So Ron has actually been with the company a good number of years and has an interesting perspective on the business. And it's quite a unique business that's had a long legacy. So I'd love for him to share that with you all and give you a perspective on how we came to be.
So the desktop workstation business is actually over 30 years old. It's been in Fort Collins, Colorado from the beginning. And the first project I worked on was the 9826A, which was a desktop computer. It actually had a 68,000 processor and a 7-inch CRT packaged together in one computer. And it was being sold to engineers, scientific, factory floor control, and movie makers. So it's basically the same kind of customers we have today. And back in those days, every part of the computer was actually designed in Fort Collins by our team, from keycaps to boards, everything. And over time, that design actually evolved to be very complicated. We had the PA RISC processors, HP PA RISC processors. We had custom HP chipsets. We had custom graphics chips and several graphics boards so we could scale the performance of that part of the solution. And we even had our own operating system, the HPUX operating system. And all of those technologies that were around the desktop workstation were actually being created in Fort Collins, Colorado. And in the early days, we were competing with the IBM PC and with Apollo and Sun and SGI. And if you look today, all of those guys are gone. So we've outlived all of our early competitors. So after we had that environment with all the HP unique components, we spent about the last 15 years going back to the x86 processors and a more industry standard model. And we actually had to change our development model to do our product designs much faster, change our business model so we work with more partners. And we actually made that transition, which is phenomenal, and became number one in the market at the same time. What's been constant through that whole history is our customers. Today we still serve those engineers, we serve people in the media and entertainment and scientific and the movie guys. So that hasn't changed, and we've followed those customers through all the transitions of the HP workstation business and helped guide them with their choices. We've also had a long relationship with the ecosystem in the workstation business, and by that I mean the ISVs that create the software for the vertical markets, the IHVs that offer accessories for workstations like 3D input devices or tablets. And again, we've helped those guys transition through with all the changes in interfaces and technology in the workstation business. So I think the main point is that we have managers and engineers in this business that have very deep roots in workstations. They have experience in things like chipsets or operating systems. And with that experience that we have, we bring that capability where we make decisions about where to innovate and how we can add reliability and quality to our systems.
So you definitely have a deep knowledge base.
Absolutely.
So given that that's a little bit unique in this industry, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about how we do things? What is our design philosophy? How do we approach creating new products and therefore innovating?
So I think maybe you've heard throughout the time we've been here terms like mission critical and high performance, high reliability. So these things form our design goal, our mission. So we really strive to drive development of high performance, highly reliable workstations for mission critical applications. And we seek to do that in a way that will excite our customers. And that really forms our design goal. What we do is we take a whole system design approach, and the Z1 is a great example of this. And I think we're going to unfold for you a little more over the next few minutes here, but we really invest engineering effort in every level of this product design. Whether it's the system level, or the layout, or the design of the main PCBs, or even the components themselves. And so we're driving to achieve the highest performance. And although we may use the same parts that the rest of the industry uses, such as Xeon class processors, we work with our partners, and we rely on strong relationships and the long history we've had with them to be able to work with them to seek, or rather to drive the best performance possible from those components. And doing that requires a high level of design stability in the product itself, and really a very high class design team that you heard Ron talk about. So performance is one, stability, quality, all of those things help to build out that whole system design philosophy.
You guys talked a little bit already about customers and how we've been listening to them and thinking about them since the very beginning. That's something that a lot of companies talk about as sort of customer intimacy and customer knowledge, but I get a sense that we take it one step further. Josh, maybe if you could talk a little bit about, how do we really integrate our customer needs into the products we make?
That's what's it's certainly something that I think, like you said, companies talk about customer insights. You guys have heard us say the word customer insights lots today. But it is something that we invest a lot of time and energy and money into understanding our customers' needs. And it's something that we, I think, go above and beyond. And we've been doing it for a number of years, decades in some cases. We do it in a couple different ways. One is customer advisory councils that we run. We've got customer advisory councils for different vertical segments. And one good example is the financial services industry. For over 10 years now, we've been meeting with all the banks in New York and London a couple times a year, in fact, where we're sharing roadmaps, we're showing prototypes under kind of confidentiality, and they'll actually give us feedback on what they like, what they don't like. They'll share some of their challenges that they're facing with us, and we're able to take the feedback from the council meeting and bring it back into our product design decisions, or take it back to R&D to help them, help us solve those customer problems. Financial services is just one. We do this with oil and gas. We do it with the production studios around the world. We do it with automotive, architectural, engineering, construction. We do it with art schools around the nation. So we spend a lot of time working with our customers in these council meetings. And it's just a great opportunity for us to interact. And to tell you the truth, on the financial services one, it's probably the longest standing meeting. We get to know all these folks by name. They all know each other through this council meeting. And so they're not shy about telling us what they like or what they don't like. And it's one of my favorite meetings throughout the year. Sometimes it's not the most fun, but it's certainly a lot of insights come out of those meetings.
Good learning experience.
Absolutely. The other thing that we do is we call it a Z360 customer panel. And right now we have about 250 customers that are signed up for this panel. It's a worldwide panel, so we've got representation from all the different regions. We have representation from all of the different customer segments that Jim Zeffirani had kind of on his list there. And this is an invaluable resource to us because these customers have signed up to give us feedback on things. And so there's a lot of times we have a game time decision where we need to make a decision between option A and option B. R&D says we need to make a decision. And so what we can do is we can reach out to this customer panel for real-time feedback to help us make some of the decisions that we make. And not everybody agrees on option A or option B, but we can at least have some data from some of our most trusted customers on making the right decision for them. And so those are both good resources for us. But I think my favorite one, the one I really I think it has the most influence, is our customer visit center that we have in Fort Collins. We have a couple customers per week come through Fort Collins, and we open the kimono and we share with them all of our design processes. We take them on tours of the lab, and they get a chance to see exactly how we're designing our workstations. So it's a great sales tool for us, but even more importantly is that we use that opportunity with them there to ask them questions and get their feedback, and it's a great opportunity for us to gather insights and gather understanding of their challenges. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for the R&D folks to come in and participate in those discussions with the customers. So most often that last row of the customer visit center is occupied by R&D folks who are participating in the discussion. They're hearing those customer insights firsthand. And so it's not just marketing, feeding insights to the rest of the organization. Everybody's hearing it directly from the customer. And there's been a lot of really important insights that came out of those interactions. And so, those are just three. There's lots of other ways we interact with our customers, of course, but those are three tools that I think really exemplify how we approach customer intimacy. And there's nothing more satisfying than showing a customer a new product and then pointing to something and saying, hey, you remember when you asked me about such and such? Well, this was kind of one of those features that was largely based on your feedback, and their face just lights up, and it's just something that it's my favorite thing to do. I love those types of customer meetings, and so but that's just I think again something that sets us apart.
It's great. It sounds like we're very generous with our time and also with our information, but then maybe we do that because it ends up coming back into better products.
It's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah. Great. So, getting back to the star of the day, the Z1, was that something that came, directly through that customer insight cycle, or was it more, we felt like it was time to give them something better that they maybe hadn't asked for yet?
Yeah. Well, we've been looking at all-in-one form factors for a number of years now. Always asking, what do you think of all-in-one form factor? Is this something that you guys would be interested in? And not letting on that we were doing it necessarily, but a lot of times customers maybe had all-in-ones in their environment, but they dismiss it as a workstation because it wasn't going to give them enough performance, it wasn't going to be flexible enough, they needed to reconfigure it, it wasn't flexible enough for their environments. And so, so that was one thing that, we took all their objections and we actually fed those as product requirements into our design process. And so we made sure that, okay, if we're going to do it, we have to make sure that it overcomes all these objections that customers have had about the form factor. But the real insight that came from customers understanding their challenges, they're either, we had some customers that had all-in-ones in their environment, but they weren't native Windows, or they couldn't mount them in a Visa mount and get them off the desk, or they couldn't reconfigure them or upgrade them. And so they had them in their environment reluctantly almost. And so we felt like there was definitely an opportunity for us to go in and deliver the right solution and meet those customer needs. And so that's what kind of ultimately led us to deliver it, but we had to deliver it with the right set of requirements.
So we just felt it was time, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That's great. So Ron, how did we do it? I mean, it's obviously, people have recognized that it wasn't something that would have been easy, or if it had been easy, others would have already done it. So
It was
how
a
did we do
big
it?
challenge, yeah. So, going in, we recognized that our customers have a set of expectations for performance and reliability and flexibility, being able to change the system and use it for multiple things. So we knew that was kind of the base. But at the same time, like Josh said, we thought there was an unmet need to save space and also create a simpler work environment with less cables and clutter, just one element in the workspace. So those were the couple of ideas. And we saw the rise of the consumer all-in-one, so we bought some consumer all-in-ones and we looked at them. And what we noticed were a couple things. First of all, they tended to compromise on either performance or they were noisy. So they didn't deliver all the capabilities that we've come to expect in our market from a tower and from professional displays. So that was one problem, compromising the features or the lack of the performance features. And then the second thing was that almost all of them were factory configured. So if you wanted to do something as simple as add memory, or if you wanted to change the graphics card, if that was possible, you might have to have a service call, or you might have to take it somewhere and have an expert do that for you. So, that again is not meeting the expectations of our market. So we decided to bring our special recipe of no compromise, whole system design, and take on that challenge of having a mix of professional features with the first of its kind accessibility and configurability. So first we started by thinking about what the components needed to be for pro features. We started with the 27-inch IPS panel, which is the same level of performance people expect from the professional displays. We chose a 400-watt power supply, so we had the power to deliver the performance of the workstation. We chose Xeon processors and professional graphics for performance. We chose error-correcting memory and RAID, so we had redundancy and fault tolerance. And we chose things like USB 3 ports and display porting out so that people can add things outside and configure the product that way. And we actually even used standard memory, so it was easy to upgrade the memory inside the product. So those are all choices about the flexibility. Then finally, we wanted to make sure that it looked good, so we wanted to choose premium materials and have materials that had environmental leadership. So we worked on that aspect of the design and brought in those true materials and looked at the chemistry of what we were doing. So that's how we chose the base design. And then what we needed to do, though, was add our kind of secret sauce to make it highly reliable and deliver quiet acoustics. And that's where we got into prototyping and modeling the system. and made measurements and made improvements and optimized the design layout where we could so that we could deliver those two things as well, the quiet acoustics and the great cooling for reliability. And then finally at the end, we had to look at some of the materials at a more detailed level, tested some of the critical components and make sure they were contributing to reliability as well as we were making those final choices. So that was kind of the evolution.
Sounds like a very involved process. So speaking of the process, Chris, I know that you've shared with us in past panels some of the iterations that you guys went through, and that it obviously didn't design itself overnight, and there were a lot of choices and new things to figure out as this is such a new and innovative product. Do you want to take us on that journey?
Yeah. So you've heard about the kind of the envelope of the design, and yet while there are other all-in-one products on the market, there was nothing that provided all of these features together. Certainly not the accessibility, and so we had something of an open book or a blank paper to work with, and so that creates an environment where invention is necessary and optimal, and so that's the approach we took, was let's look at this differently. But we did have those goals. We had a size profile based on the size of the display, a 27-inch panel. We chose to have a no-compromise workstation, so we're including all of the features of a workstation, such as Xeon class processors, ECC memory, Pro graphics, all of those things. We wanted to also make sure that this product met our design values, the kind of quality and reliability that we engineer into all of our products. And we had sort of the biggest nut to crack here, which was how are we going to open up this product and allow people to actually get their hands into it and do the kinds of configuration things that they do in their environments, in their professional environments. And so we had to think about that. So we actually brought some pictures. I can show you a few of the iterations we went through as we thought about some different ways to do that. We had a general concept for what we would make the product look like based on our current industrial design. As I mentioned, the size was understood. This was one case where we considered maybe allowing the back panel to hinge downward so that you could get access that way. Another thought we had was potentially just to remove the entire workstation, the system head, essentially off of the base, and then access it by removing the back panel. We also thought about a variety of ways of hinging, and in this case, you're seeing the LCD laying down on a surface or the table. And in this model, it was maybe we could just remove the LCD panel and allow access that way. So all of these, if you thought about them for a moment, you might recognize areas where they all have some problems. And whether it's intuitiveness, ease of use, having to actually remove parts, such that you need more space to work, you have to put something down, or let's say lifting the heavy system itself off of the base in order to access the part. All of those things are compromised. Even the one where you crack it open, laying the front glass down on a surface is not really a great thing to do with an optically sensitive piece of glass. And so what we came up with was the model in the Z1, and we made the stand integral in the process such that you just recline the stand, and then you have this really simple intuitive motion where it's like lifting the lid of a briefcase or a car hood or something that pretty much everybody's familiar with and can understand quickly, and it's very intuitive. And the nice part about it is that it gives you complete access. There's no obstruction. It's very easy to get in. So it's very intuitive, very easy to access. So we're very pleased with it.
Yeah.
From here, we had the basic outline done, and we had to spend time on the system layout. So some of those objectives that you may not see, we talked about the audio system, and the front-firing speakers. That's an objective, to get the best quality sound. We have very strong requirements around thermal management, making sure that the product is reliable by keeping the heat level down or keeping the heat out of the box. And as you do that, you have to move air, and air means fans, and fans generally mean noise. And so managing the acoustics was a significant part of that. And so we invested a lot of effort in optimizing the layout in order to achieve all the power delivery and all the thermal management and airflow.
So a lot of variables to get right before you can come up with the final product.
Yeah.
Which was the hardest?
There were many hard parts. I would say one of the very difficult parts was the stand itself. Engineering of the stand was a challenge. We actually have some inventions in the stand itself, so we've invested a lot of time there. The hinging of the lid was another area that may not be quite as obvious because it seems like a relatively straightforward motion for a hinge, but in fact it's a two-dimensional motion that's required for this product. One of the other areas of invention is the graphics solution, and we actually created a custom graphics module that looks like this. This is a PCIe graphics card. This is a NVIDIA Quadro card, and it would have been really great to be able to just plug this right into the Z1. But these cards are about between 20 and 40% less power efficient, and power means noise. And so that was something that we just couldn't tolerate, was adding more noise into the system and more heat generation into the system, because that's what efficiency translates into. And so we actually adopted a mobile style. This is a Quadro M graphics card. It's fundamentally the same solution. It's the same GPU. It's a more efficient version of the same GPU, so it uses less power overall, but you still get Quadro performance. And we created a custom module for that solution that allows us to make it quite easy to use, to insert the card into the system, or to remove it or configure it, as well as managing the whole thermal solution very efficiently. So that was one of the key inventions in the product also.
That's great. So a lot of the innovation we do, or the inventions we create, especially around thermals and that sort of thing, are really to provide better reliability. I think we talked a lot about these mission critical tasks people are doing. How does that drive us to, it sounds like it really are reaching a higher bar. Ron, do you want to talk a little bit about the specific requirements that are needed to get to that level?
Sure. So one way that it drives us is when we think about how we pick the components that go into an all-in-one or a workstation. And there's really kind of three layers. The first thing is that we can choose components that are redundant in and of themselves, like error-correcting memory or RAID, where you get some redundancy, or professional graphics where there's more margin built into it. And often those kinds of choices are going to be different for workstations. You're not going to see those offered on a consumer product, or probably even most commercial computers. Those are specific to workstations, so that extra redundancy. The second thing is, when we think about the components themselves, if we think about graphics or memory, we can choose different components from different suppliers. And what we tend to do there is we build very complex configs. We use the testing that we've been crafting and honing over the many years to make configs that are much more complicated than our users are typically going to use, much more stressful. And we test those very hard. And what we tend to find are where are the weak spots. It could be in the component hardware, it could be in the firmware, or it could be in the driver that drives that hardware. And then at that point, we either work with those suppliers to improve them, or we'll choose between the components that we've tested and choose only the best ones at that higher level, like memory and graphics. At the very lowest level, when we choose components to put on the motherboard, we do the same thing. We have electrical components or capacitors or passives, and we test those. We've learned through time and experience what we need to look for in the specifications to make those long line, how we can test them. And then we actually take some of those into the material science lab and look at things like the thickness of plating on connectors, or the way things were constructed, and understand from that which ones are going to be the most reliable and which ones aren't. And again, we pick those that are most reliable, or in some cases we can work with those suppliers of components and improve them. Through those three layers of redundancy, tuning the major components with our partners, and then choosing the best low-level components will drive the reliability into the system.
And we did all that with the Z1?
Absolutely, and every workstation.
Great. So that's a little bit of a look into how we make sure the hardware can perform to its absolute best under the absolute most possible circumstances. What about the software? You know, people depend on their applications, and especially if you're a professional, that's kind of probably all you really care about is that your application's going to perform. Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about how we make sure that
Yeah, I think
it's the best it can be?
the thing that I want to highlight is our ISV certification process. And a lot of our we've been talking about ISV certifications throughout the day. It's something that we've done for a number of years, but HP really goes above and beyond when it comes to the certification process. We early on in the development process, we're going to send early prototypes to our software partners for them to actually go in and kick the tires and test. And oftentimes they'll find issues, but then we have plenty of time to resolve those issues through BIOS changes or motherboard changes to make sure that we're going to get the best possible performance and reliability out of those systems. And so long before customers get their hands on these systems. So the ISV certification process that we have is very extensive. We've got many ISV partners that we've worked with over the years, sometimes decades. And what's unique about HP's process is that we're not just going to send the next Z200 or the next Z1 to the partners. We're actually sending that platform along with all the graphics cards we're going to ship, and making sure that we're actually certifying the configurations, not just the platform. And so we also have a dedicated team based in Fort Collins that each of the team is kind of assigned to different ISV software partners, and we'll go and we're working with them at a technical level to understand performance and understand BIOS settings that we can optimize for those particular applications. So the software certification piece, you guys see a lot of the marketing probably in the industry about HP plus Autodesk or HP plus Adobe, but there's a whole other world behind that where there's engineer-to-engineer discussions going on to make sure that we've got reliability built into our systems.
In fact, a bunch of these are set to ship out.
Yep. Yeah, this is one exception where early prototypes didn't go out to our software partners early because we really wanted to kind of make a big splash today. So.
And that's not something you usually see with a consumer product.
Yeah, usually software certifications is something that's specific to workstations.
So I think we're just about out of time, but we're really excited. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing to get all of this professional quality capabilities in such a beautiful form factor. So we have time for questions, or?
Yeah, so we're going to open up the experience zone. So we have a few minutes if people want to stay back and ask questions, and then afterwards everyone can just make their way out around the lobby area.
Chris and Ron and Josh will all be out there, so you can flag them down too. But if there's any questions now, we can take a few.
Why you ruled out touchscreen? Or did you?
Yeah, I guess I could talk a little bit to that. So we haven't ruled out touchscreen. In the first generation, it's something that we did decide not to introduce, but it's something that we're keeping a close eye on. We've been working with our software partners, and it kind of goes back to that software relationships. Partners like Autodesk and SolidWorks and others are looking at touch, but the ecosystem doesn't exist today. So if you're going to be a CAD, if you're going to be designing CAD or you're going to be doing 3D animation, the finger is a pretty blunt object to be doing major design work, so the UI has to actually change for professional applications. So it's something that we're keeping a close eye on, and we're looking at combinations of pen plus touch and things like that would really fit our markets well. People that are going to navigate their music collection or make crops of photos and stuff, the consumer market, the touch makes a lot of sense. But when you start talking about technical computing, the ecosystem isn't quite there yet. But we think it's inevitable that touch will become a part of those applications. And at that time, when the timing is right, you probably see us introduce something like that.
You mentioned that you have customer panels that span the globe, which is great. Does anything stand out at you that is different about customers in Asia-Pac, for example, in terms of their requirements and needs?
Yeah, so the one question that we get from Asia, I think, so far is why 27-inch? I think the 27-inch might be a little bit bigger than would be mainstream. It was a tough decision because we really wanted to focus on one size, kind of, so we could just focus all of our energy behind that. But I think Asia Pacific, you know, maybe the 27-inch will be on the larger side, whereas if you look globally, the 27-inch we feel is going to be mainstream going into the future. So that's the one thing that kind of stands out immediately. But there's a number of things that not everybody agrees on every design decision that we made. But at the end of the day, we try to do our diligence and cross all the different regions, all the different vertical segments, and at the end of the day, make the best possible solution we can.
You talked about several new inventions in the design of the Z1. Did you file any new patents based on those inventions?
Essentially, yes. That's our job. Invent and then protect our inventions. So absolutely.
So things like the hinges and stuff like that.
Yeah, the hinging, the opening of the display, the stand has some inventions in it.
Industrial designs
have patents.
There's patents around things like the display port input, which is switchable from input to output. So it's flexible. You can connect a docking station for your notebook and actually display your notebook through your Z1 as well.
Let you know when they all go through.
Another thing I guess to mention is that we have a portfolio of patents that apply to the towers, and a lot of the things that were invented for the towers have been applied here as well. So Chris talked about the quiet acoustics. We have, I think it's 8 or 9 temperature sensors in the Z1. We started by looking at the config, setting the fans for that config, and then actively tracking those zones and driving the cooling that way. And that's a patented feature that we have in the past as well. So a lot of things carry over from the tower workstations we can apply to this new form factor. And a lot of things around the serviceability, ease of access, configurability, green touch points, and so on.
Thank you.
One more question over here?
Just really quickly, as far as the screen size goes, are you considering offering larger or smaller screens, bumping up to 30 or going down to 24 inches?
Yeah, I think that we're going to continue to consider that, you know, and the customers drive our plans at the end of the day. And sometimes customers don't know what they want, but I think the 27-inch we felt was the right. It's maybe a little bit on the large side, but that's where we see the future, and it's with a wide aspect ratio. The 27-inch is a great size that it's becoming one of our best-selling professional displays, and so we wanted something that we could carry forward, and so we'll continue to listen to our customers, and if there's a demand for different sizes, we'll certainly consider that. Currently, this is where our plan is to focus our attention on. This is the 27-inch.
Any other questions? If not, we'll let you guys enjoy the experience zones, and
And we're out there at the
they're out there
questions
too.
for one.
Thank you.
Thank you.